Hello, everyone. Welcome to Quantify with Richa show. This channel revolves around complete information on quantitative techniques and interviews with the leaders in this space. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe and hit the bell icon and stay updated with the exciting upcoming sessions. Today, I had the honor of inviting Coskun, who has over 25 years of work experience. He recommends option strategies in the race space to macro hedge funds. He also has significant experience in building pricing models, making pricing, and executing for clients and funds, as well as outstanding trading record at Citibank, Global Treasury, and Backup Derivatives Desk. So come on, let's learn from the best. Welcome to the channel, Coskun.
Hi, Richa. Thank you very much.
So I just so, for the viewers' benefit, I wanted to know that, given the current scenario, like the Russia war is going on, and there's a lot of doubts and insecurities in terms of people, whether they should invest and what kind of strategies that they can use to, get good returns. So I wanted to know from you, like from your perspective, what do you suggest such traders who have not much information, but they still want to invest and get good returns?
Well, Richa, this is a very good question. My perspective is very, very narrow. I suggest, I recommend trading strategies to hedge funds. And these are usually macro hedge funds in the interest rate space. So it's a very narrow field. There aren't that many people who do this kind of product. A lot of volume goes through in the interest rate market. It's usually quite liquid, but as you said, because of the war, because of COVID, volatility has just gone through the roof recently, and it's a lot more dangerous. You have to watch your exposures a lot more closely. Let me tell you about what I tend to do is to recommend well risk managed trades. Basically, if you get it right, you make 10 ticks. If you get it wrong, you're not going to lose more than 1 or 2 ticks. Usually like a 1-to-4 ratio would be good. From what I see, all of my clients tend to take very little outright vol risk at the moment because it's quite dangerous. So we are recommending more flies, broken flies, call spreads, put spreads, things like this. And the edge you have is if you recommend trades both upside and downside, which have a payout ratio of like 1-to-4, you can, even if you're not right, even if you're right only half the time, you should still be able to make some revenue.
Oh, that's good.
That's the perspective that I use. That's the way that my clients trade. It's less of a magic system of algorithmic trading. These things occur in the background. There are lots of quants out there. There are lots of people who deliver research as to where, like your ARIMA, LSTM, all these kind of models. I know how these work. I use these myself, but I don't use them to trade. What I use to trade is much more old school. It's more like reading the newspaper, reading the economists, reading the views. Over the years, you see who you would trust a little bit more than others. And based on a forward-looking model, because all of these models, they're all based on averages. Obviously, averages are by definition a lagging indicator. I'm not saying they're not useful. I use them a lot. I use a lot of technical analysis, but I use it in a way to see the dynamics of the market that I'm looking at, the extremes, how far it's gone, under what conditions, how far did it move. And I try to use those dynamics, those numbers in order to set targets and entry levels, rather than using a model that says, oh, my model says we should be buying now, or my model says we should be selling now. That is, in my view and in my clients' view, they won't accept that at all. You need to have a good fundamental view. The war is going on at the moment. Eventually, the market will get used to pricing in this war risk, so the volatility relative to that will recede. So you try to extract vol premia, you try to extract term premia by putting on trades which will, you hope, will work well with time.
Actually, so to your point, I actually agree with you. Like, there are models which, basically will not be able to predict such black swan cases, such as the war, the COVID cases. And because of those, there's so much uncertainty in the market. And obviously, fundamental, combined with fundamental education is required to, work on various strategies and, buy or sell. So these things are, I think, utmost important while taking these decisions. And I think this is what actually happening all over the world currently, right? So in India also, in UK, or like other geographies, US, I think everyone is facing this same uncertainty, because of which, this fundamental analysis is an utmost requirement at this point, at least.
Yeah, there are people who use a lot of algorithmic trading, rightly so. There are a lot of option market makers that need to know when to cover their deltas, etc. And there are a lot of HFT guys. So there's lots of flavors of trading out there. So and they use various components of this quantitative methods in different ways. So it's just for what I do, what my clients want. A lot of this analysis is used as background rather than gospel.
Got it. And in terms of, like you just mentioned about the algorithms that is being used. So what kind of, programming language do you suggest that people should prefer? Or do you think that it doesn't matter and they can go with anything, like, which is efficient?
Again, it depends on what your field is. Personally, I program myself to build various models, but I use them as toys, basically, just to see outcomes, potential outcomes. I use Python only, but I've been doing this for 25 years. So I've been started from VBA, and the best models are the simplest models. Honestly, just you try to keep it simple as possible, basically so that your clients will understand what you're trying to do, and it's easier to sell something that you can explain as simple as possible. So if you can achieve your ends using Excel, I think that's what you should do. But if you need to digest a lot more data, obviously Python is perfect. But if you need to build a machine, you need C. But that's not what I do. But I'm sure there are people that would use such things.
And I'm actually curious, since you have a lot of, like, over the time we had discussion also, you have so much of work and there's so much of pressure. So I just wanted to know, how do you ensure efficiency, like in terms of doing your work? It's a utmost requirement, I'm sure, for you as well, to have a certain level of efficiency so that, you can work on your deliverables and everything is met at the, particular time, since the time is of crucial essence for you. So how do you ensure efficiency in that case?
There's no one solution for this kind of thing. Usually it's quite hectic. Usually you get an order and you're trying to execute something or other, and sometimes one of your models breaks and you have to fix it on the hop while everything is going on. And it can be a complete nightmare when you're trying to fix a model while trying to execute something. It can be a nightmare. Honestly, I have no particular solution to that. My day is actually normally quite quiet until you get orders. Nobody wants to do anything for ages, and then suddenly everybody wants to do the same thing at the same time. So suddenly you get a barrage of stuff. Like the last 3 days, we've had the Fed, the Bank of England, and then non-farm payroll, and the market's been all over the place. Certain currencies are turning around. Again, vol is gone crazy. The structures I try to recommend are to try and sell vol when it's high, because that is how you extract vol premium, but not by simply selling options, writing options. That's a bit too risky for most people. So you try to cover it, turn it into a spread, turn it into a fly, but so that if it goes in the direction you expect, you lay down one, you hope to pick up 4 or 5 or 10. But if it goes the wrong way, hopefully some structures, even if it goes the wrong way, you're still going to make a little bit of money. So this is the kind of pressure. It's less programming, more trying to see how far the market can go given where it's been.
So it's not as rosy like we think that, it's easily manageable, and there are sometimes hectic days, like you mentioned. It's not perfect. Yeah.
For sure.
And one more thing I wanted to ask from you is, like, I have recently, there are a lot of discussions around automate trading, automate your orders. Like, how much favor are you in automating it, and whether a person should automate at all? Like, to go back, relax, and let the algorithmic work, or what do you suggest?
There are people who trade like this, algorithmic traders, from HFT to non-time constrained guys. There are people who do this. This is not something any of my clients look at. There are funds out there that do algorithmic trading. They have a higher frequency rate of trading, but we have the trades I put out usually have views of a few days to a few months. So you try to get the direction of the market right, and if it goes right, you can see that it's working, rather than getting an electronic order. Electronic orders are good if you're doing high frequency trades. That kind of thing comes in for high frequency trades. That's not something that I do. I'm usually on the other side. I mean, when I have an order to fill, I go and put my bid into CME or ICE, and you see the algorithmic market makers making markets for the prices, the structures I have interest in. I go on the bid, and suddenly the bids and offers change. So that is where the algorithmic trading comes in.
Okay.
Basically to market make options, for instance.
Got it. And also, like, a lot of people would like to understand what should be the journey to come into your space, like what, in their career path, how they can make such a move. What do you suggest a person should work on to get such kind of job in their space?
Well, honestly, I'll give you what happened to me, and then you can, I finished electronic engineering, and I couldn't get any, I wanted to be a trader, and I couldn't get any job anywhere. This was the old days where you had to write every single application by hand. So I had like 55 rejection letters, and every single one I'd written by hand. It was a nightmare. And eventually I gave up. I just went to Citibank operations, back office, and I said, look, I will work for free. Just let me in, and let me show you what I can do. And my first job was sitting next to the telex boy. So it was settlements, back office, about the lowest rung of the ladder. And a few weeks, months, I saw what was going on, and I built a couple of macros. I built a couple of programs to help make my job more efficient. And I kept moving from one spot to the other. So it's about getting your foot in the door. Eventually, I moved from back office to consumer business treasury, and from there to global treasury. Again, I built a lot of calculators, pricers for swap pricers. So in treasury, for instance, you would get asked to make a price 2 or 3 years, a swap. You need to calculate that price using bootstrapping. Your inputs are your futures, your interest rate futures, 90-day futures. You strap them up, you add in a stub value for the front, and you come up with a price, and you make that price to your clients. This helps you hedge. As soon as somebody buys 1 year swap off you, you sell, I don't know, 4 loads of futures or 3 loads of futures to hedge against it. And you lock in that spread, the difference between your swap curve and your futures curve, your overnight, let's say, and your 3-month curve. And you warehouse your risk here. And everybody that calls you for 2 months, 3 months, wants to buy the swaps. So you're always the same way. And then after 3 months, everybody that calls you wants to sell the swaps. So you're the other way. So your bid offer becomes this spread between the overnight and the 3-month curve. So you buy here, you sell here, and then you do it the other way, and you try to lock in the spread, hoping that the spread doesn't move too much. So after trading for about 10 years in Citibank Treasury, I moved on to broking. I was head of the swaps desk in Tradition for a good while throughout the crisis, throughout 2008. And there I had to build I had to build more pricing models, but it was again more difficult because in those days there was no quants around, so you have to build everything from scratch, which was quite a hard job. For everything from the date calculators up, you had to build DLLs, Excel to help you create these pricing structures. After about 5 years doing that, I moved on to options, and I've been doing options for about 12 years. Again, the models are slightly different. Everybody looks at the very similar models in the options world. Everybody uses some flavor of Black-Scholes or other, but everybody pretty much has the same machine. In the swaps world, you build your own machine. Everybody has slightly different ways of building these OTC models. In the options world, the models are very, very similar. It becomes more about the strategy that you're trying to deploy, rather than trying to take advantage of pricing discrepancies. So long and short of it, the answer to your question is basically you need to get your foot in the door in any kind of role. I would recommend, it doesn't matter. Once you're inside, you get a better view of who does what in which department. You go sit next to the guy and say, hey, what do you do? And then you get a feel for what you like. And there are thousands of different roles, even in the trading world. So you pick what you like and go and sit next to the guy. The way I did it, I built his models, and then when he went on holiday, there was nobody else that knew how the models worked, so I had to go and cover for him. So that's one way.
Actually, like listening to you, I got the point that, first you have to, get your foot in the door and then look for opportunities. And one more thing that I understood is that, once you are in that place, understand the concepts, understand how it's working, have a deep knowledge, spend some time in that industry, like in that particular role, and then move on to another role so that, that all concepts are cleared and you have a very good hold on it. Then you take another role and then, excel in that. So such that, over the experience that you are gathering over the period of time, you have a good hold of it and you have a good knowledge in terms of experience.
Absolutely.
another thing I wanted to know from you is in terms of education wise, do you think that, a particular education is a must, like, or not education, like not going with the certificate, but having this knowledge is important apart from the work experience that you're getting on the job? Like, what do you suggest in that case?
I have found the quantitative side useful, but it's the biggest use is knowing where the limitations are, where the assumptions fail, so that you know when to use the models and when not to use the models, when they don't apply. It's more important knowing when not to use them, because if you blindly follow these things, it's just a matter of time before you fail. It's important to know how they work and why they are. But it's also important to kind of keep them at a bit of an arm's length and always keep interrogating them and saying, well, that's not going to work here because the world is, and also it changes from seat to seat to seat. From house, you could be working in a hedge fund, you could be working in a research shop, you could be working in a bank, you could be working at more of like an option market making role. So the application of the various thousands of models you have are different in all of these houses, in all of these shops. So the underlying thing is that you've got to have a good grounding in all the quantitative stuff, from maths to programming nowadays, so you just need to know how they all work and what their assumptions are, so that you can use it appropriately in whatever field you happen to have chosen to move toward.
Exactly. So yeah, this is the point where most people don't understand, is that just knowing the programming language, just knowing that, this is the model, this is the LSTM model as an example, this is the RIMA, this is the RIMA X or CARS model. Just knowing is not important. You should know in and out of everything, the mathematics around it, what kind of equations that they are using under the model and how they are executing. Every inch of the information is a requirement in this field, a person who's stepping into it. Another thing, going towards the non-technical side, Koskun, I wanted to know, like you mentioned, there were 25 rejections that you got, right, before you got into this field. And like, there would be times for you, not in just this instance, there would be times for you where you thought that, like you should not give up. Like, what is the thing that keeps you going on? Or to the viewers who are currently, how they are facing, they are not getting into the field, or there's some issues that they are still facing, what keeps you going on so that they can take some motivation from you?
Well, you don't fail until you give up. So it's just a matter of not giving up. It's a matter of, once you get that 51st rejection letter, to sit down and write the 52nd. It keeps going. You keep going until eventually someone somewhere says yes. And if it takes 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, this is the kind of drive that you need. But I mean, you can find a role somewhere. Again, it's important just to get your foot in the door. And once you've done that, once you can show other people what you can do, it becomes a lot easier. Once you're inside a bigger institution, then you can move around, you can apply for posts within the organizations. So you just, if you can do that, I think that's just look at the next step ahead, rather than, oh, I want to be a trader, or I want to do this, I want to be a quant, I want to be, what you shouldn't do is try and avoid. There's a lot of cowboys out there that say that you should trade PA, that you should use this model or that model. I would stay away from that kind of thing. Trading PA can be extremely dangerous. I mean, if you're going to do it in such small size that, because you learn from your mistakes, be prepared to lose X amount of money while learning. You need to invest in your losses so that you learn what to do, what not to do. And there's a lot of cowboys out there that'll tell you, oh, you should be buying Netflix, you should be selling Google.
Yeah.
These kind of things are not, that doesn't, very, very little value. Things that are of value is somebody saying, oh, some 20 people keeled over with COVID in November 2019. Picking that up, and usually you see that in a newspaper somewhere. That's your research. You see, and then you extrapolate from that, saying, okay, if this carries on going, what's going to be the next step? What's going to be the next step? So your best research is actually newspapers, rather than economists, rather than somebody on Twitter. Although Twitter I value greatly. I don't. 90% of my time I spend on Twitter now. But then you can pick your poison. You can see who's been getting it right, who's been getting it wrong.
Yeah.
That can add a lot of value. In the old days, we didn't used to have Twitter. Bloomberg used to be the be all and end all. But in the old days, you used to see a headline on Bloomberg, and you used to read about it on the newspaper only 2 days after. So you had an information advantage. So
Edge to
that's no longer there anymore. Now your information edge is basically Twitter. There something happens, and you're following the editor of the Wall Street Journal, who's chatting to some editor in Bloomberg, saying they're looking at the same incident, and one says, oh, it's going to go here, the other says, oh, it's going to go there, and you see them arguing in Twitter, and then you can form your own opinion before even the piece comes out. So you have a massive information advantage.
That's a good point, I would say.
So there's lots of good things you have today that you didn't have in the old days, but the dynamic has changed a lot. So
got it. Actually, yeah, that's a very good point. Everyone should follow this, that, now no one has this edge. They can go to Twitter and get this knowledge by looking at people, for example, Wall Street journalists, and, take the cue from there. I think, Coskun, thank you for your time. I have, gathered all the information I think I needed. And the last thing that, you mentioned is that, keep going, don't look at rejections. And, that maybe 50-second application would have, change or make wonders for you. So I think keep going is the most important thing that people should, work on, and stay positive. Thank you,
that's right.
Coskun, for your time.
Thank you very much, Richa.
Bye.
Bye-bye.